The big macro theme is the Panama Canal is a big deal for our ag industry and for ag producers. It's also a big financial deal rather than just its size. So it's a $5 billion expansion of the Panama Canal that allows ships that are basically carrying 3,000 to 5,000 containers a day to carry almost 3 times that by the time it opens up the end of 2015. And so what that means is, for the first time, we're going to have the ability for our southeast, eastern coast ports to participate in the kind of trade that has been pretty much exclusively been our west coast ports because they had the deep water ports, they were commerce ports. Most of our east coast ports of the last 5 decades were military ports: Virginia, Charleston, Jacksonville. They're now becoming what we call post-Panamax ready, which means they have the deep water, they've dredged, they added the cranes, or in the process of doing that. And what that means is, when you add that new opened up East Coast and combine it with our rail infrastructure, which is much better in the central part of the U.S. and the eastern United States, it moves goods north-south, not just east-west. It provides a much more efficient connectivity that I think is going to be a very big deal. It's going to create a competition for the West Coast ports that they've never had. It's going to provide efficiencies because you're able to fill those empty containers that came in from LA Long Beach with either ag or manufactured goods that can be put on rail and moved into the East Coast ports. It also is a big deal for our Great Lakes ports. So we've kind of forgotten about our Great Lakes. Port of Cleveland has just opened up an express service that will go into Russia and Northern Europe. And so our Great Lakes cities, we forget they create about 28% of our GDP. They're a tremendous movement of grain and agricultural goods, and now when you look at the GDP growth in Russia and Northern Europe as well as Latin America, the Great Lakes ports become very important because of their rail and port connectivity. It's been a long time premise. You know, it really is cheap to move goods by river barge down the river. There's not a lot of fuel consumed. You go down the river. The problem is the unreliability of the water volumes, the water flows. You never know whether Mother Nature is going to give you a flood or a drought in the Mississippi. You know, one year we get a flood, the next year we get drought, and like we had low levels this year. And the problem is it's very unreliable. And everything in the supply chain today is about just in time. And it's not just chips and auto parts and cars and manufactured goods, but it's also agricultural commodities that need to feed into food processing activity in a just-in-time capacity. And so the most efficient route today is by rail. We've created a real challenge on the truckers with these new hours worked rules, so it's moving more off the trucks and onto the rail. And the river is just not as reliable because of good old Mother Nature. And with the rail infrastructure that we have and the technology and advances that have come in efficiencies with the railroads and their connectivity, especially to the east and southeast ports, unfortunately I think rail has the advantage over river and barge traffic.